He called me partner right before he gutted me. 17 years. That's how long I built his empire. Not mine, not ours, his. I gave him my youth, my weekends, my marriage. I gave him my daughter's school plays and every Sunday I should have spent sleeping in. And how did he thank me? "Everyone a toast," Harold boomed, clinking his glass with the grin of a man who still thinks he owns the room. As we step into the future, I'm proud to introduce the next face of our business, my son Daniel. There it was, no heads up, no meeting, no warning, just a public execution with catered hors d'oeuvres. Applause filled the conference hall like static, empty and clattering. Someone near me even said, "Finally." That part I heard louder than the mic. The air stank of cologne and betrayal. My wife didn't look at me, not once, just kept sipping her wine like it was her job. Her eyes flicked toward Harold, then Daniel, then down to her phone. And Daniel of all people, clapped me on the back like we were frat brothers. "You good, man? Ready to hand over your client list?" That's when it shifted. I smiled, not politely, not bitterly, just a flat, amused smile, like a man who hears the first crack in the dam and doesn't bother to run. "No," I said quietly. "I'm here to—" He laughed, big and sloppy, but halfway through he stopped because he looked at my eyes. Really looked. His smirk didn't fade. It collapsed. You ever see a guy realize, mid-joke, that maybe he's the punchline? Yeah. So if you're listening right now and you've ever built something just to watch someone else slap their name on it and hand you a gift basket, you'll want to hear what comes next. Also, apparently over 97% of folks listen without subscribing. That's fine. But if this hits you anywhere deep, a quick sub keeps us fueled to keep going. And trust me, you'll want to see how far this one goes. Because I didn't yell that night, didn't make a scene. That's not my style. I walked out after dessert, nodded to the event photographer, and let Daniel's introduction echo behind me like a fart in an elevator. 2 days later, I showed up to work at 6:13 a.m. My keycard didn't work. My name was already scraped off the glass wall outside my office. I checked the parking garage security cam later. Daniel had parked in my spot, my assigned spot, license plate and all. Inside, there were boxes, my boxes, labeled with my name in Sharpie like I was someone's forgotten Amazon return. No HR meeting, no farewell breakfast, just a firm-wide email from Harold's assistant. After nearly 2 decades of dedicated service, Richard Weller will be stepping down to pursue personal projects. Please direct all client communications to Daniel Weller moving forward. Stepping down, like I tripped, like this was voluntary, like I hadn't built the CRM, onboarded 80% of the top grossing accounts, and flown cross-country for funerals just to keep relationships warm. At home that night, my wife, Jessica, said, "It's not personal. Dad just wants to keep the business in the family." I looked at her across the kitchen island. 17 years wasn't family? She didn't answer. She just rinsed her wine glass and went upstairs. The next morning I made coffee, checked the time, and started dialing. Not clients, vendors, VAs, the actual bones behind the skin. Because while Harold and Daniel played dress up in my old seat, they didn't realize one thing. I never let them touch the engine. Not once. Monday morning hit like a slap with a ring on. I pulled into the garage like I always did. Same time, same route, same stall. Only this time, stall 3 had a shiny new Lexus in it. Dealer plate still on, Daniels. The license plate frame said LFG, the kind of thing a man with no legacy clings to for personality. I parked in Visitor, grabbed my briefcase, walked up to the entrance like muscle memory. Beep, red light. Try again. Beep, red light. I stared at the card reader like it owed me rent. A security guard I didn't recognize stepped out from behind the desk and smiled with that rehearsed pity expression. "Can I help you, sir?" "Sir?" "Yeah," I said calmly. "Try rebooting the server. Sometimes Harold forgets the back-end resets at 4 a.m. He tapped the screen. "No, sir. You've been removed from the Active Directory. Do you want me to call someone from HR?" I didn't answer, just turned, walked to the elevator lobby, and there it was. 4 boxes, labeled in marker, R. Weller. One had my wedding photo in a cracked frame. Another had my awards, shoved in sideways under old mail. On top of the stack, a coffee mug from our 10-year anniversary party. The one that read, "Legacy isn't given, it's earned." I picked it up. It was chipped. An email pinged my phone. I didn't need to read it to know. Subject line, "Transition update. Please welcome Daniel Weller." The message was written like a eulogy. After 17 years of exemplary service, Richard has decided to step back and explore new opportunities. Decided. As if I woke up one day and thought, you know what'd be fun? Getting stabbed in the back by my in-laws? I called my assistant, Laura. She picked up on the second ring, whispered, "I'm so sorry. They locked my credentials too. I tried warning you last week. HR made us sign NDAs. Don't apologize," I said. "They'll learn soon enough." She paused. Should I forward your contacts somewhere?" "No need. I already have them, the ones that matter." That afternoon, I sat at home in the den, still in my blazer. No music, no TV, just silence and the slow spin of the ceiling fan. Jessica came home around 6, toed off her heels, walked in like it was just another Monday. She didn't ask how my day was. When I finally spoke, it wasn't a question. They shut me out. She poured herself a glass of wine, Pinot, the one Harold always stocked in bulk at the office parties. "It's not personal," she said without meeting my eyes. "Dad just wants to keep it in the family. It was always going to be Daniel eventually." I turned to her, slowly, like someone studying a museum artifact too fragile to touch. 17 years wasn't family? She blinked once, sipped her wine. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I smiled. "That's the thing," I said. "It's not hard at all." She left the room. I stayed seated. The walls of the house felt thinner somehow, like they could hear things now, like the insulation wasn't enough to keep betrayal from echoing. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. That's not how you win against people who measure strength by volume. Instead, I opened the laptop I hadn't used in months, pulled up an old spreadsheet, one I kept for a rainy day, and brother, it was pouring. 3 days after the lockout, my phone rang. Not the work phone, they'd cut that. This was my personal line, one I hadn't given Daniel, which meant either Jessica handed it over or he went snooping through my HR records. Either way, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times before answering. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Hey, Rich, listen, I need the Rolodex. Just trying to get all the client data centralized, you know? Dad said you'd cooperate. Don't make this awkward." I stared at the wall, one of Jessica's abstract canvas prints, lots of brushstrokes and no meaning, fitting. "Check your inbox," I said flatly. A pause, then the line went dead. I'd already hit send. The email, titled "Formal Asset Transfer Proposal," attached, a single-page PDF, clean, lawyered, bulletproof. Top line, buyout agreement for client portfolio, $12 million USD. Terms, non-negotiable. Payment in full. No piecemeal, no delayed schedules, no equity swaps. Pay or go build your own damn book. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. "Is this a joke?" he spat. 12 million? I didn't answer. "You think your list is worth that?" Still nothing. "You built that portfolio on our time, with our resources." Now that made me chuckle. I didn't mean to, but it came out, a low, tired laugh that probably rattled him more than any threat would have. "I built it," I said. "Full stop." "Come on," he said, laughing nervously. "Let's be adults. This is your exit package. Take the win." "That's not a win," I replied. "That's hush money. I don't need it." I hung up. 5 minutes later, I got a text. Just a thumbs up emoji. Passive aggression, the new currency of cowards. What Daniel didn't understand, what Harold never could, was that the client list wasn't just names and numbers. It was relationships. It was birthday calls, sympathy cards, late-night emails during mergers. It was knowing a CEO's kid had epilepsy and remembering not to schedule lunch in places with strobe lights. It was trust, earned one funeral, one favor, one forgotten anniversary at a time. And that kind of capital can't be bought, can only be stolen, unless, of course, the owner sees it coming and booby-traps the vault. Because here's what I didn't tell Daniel. 2 years ago, I'd started separating the wheat from the chaff, quietly, surgically. Every quarterly update I gave Harold, sanitized, every CRM export, filtered. The VIP clients, the whales, the legacy families, the 7-figure retainers, they were logged elsewhere, on a personal server. Not illegal, not shady, just prudent. Call it instinct, or maybe just survival. So when Daniel tried to make cold calls that week, he got polite brush-offs. Some didn't answer at all. Others forwarded him to voicemails with cheerful lies. "We're happy with our current advisor." One CEO, a friend of mine from back when his company ran out of a storage unit, told Daniel flat out, "We signed exclusivity with Rich. Check your compliance manual." Daniel called again that Friday, voice quieter this time. "Okay, look, we might be willing to pay something. Just not that much, not 12. I said nothing. Let the silence spread like fog. He tried one last angle. "Dad's not going to go for this. You're just dragging this out." I smiled. "No, Daniel," I said. "I'm just watching you try to run a machine without the engine." Then I clicked end. and opened a bottle of something expensive I didn't even remember buying, because that was the first real moment I knew they'd underestimated the wrong man. Daniel's first week in the chair went about as well as a haircut from a drunk barber. He walked in all puffed up, monogrammed shirt, Rolex slightly too tight, the kind of cologne you wear when you're trying to smell like success but end up choking the plants. Harold did the whole passing the torch photo shoot in the lobby too. Flashbulbs, firm handshake, that smug little plaque with "Legacy begins here" mounted behind them. Legacy. Interesting word considering they just tried to delete mine. By Wednesday, the cracks started to show. Daniel, not being the patient type, decided to go full offensive. He called the top-tier clients personally, some he'd never even met before. "Hey Jim, Daniel Weller here stepping in for Rich. Excited to keep you on board. When can we set up a lunch?" Jim's reply. "Daniel who?" Others were more polite, but no less clear. "Sorry, Daniel, we've made other arrangements." "Thanks, but we're staying with Rich. We've signed a conflict waiver already. It's exclusive." By Thursday, it was more than just awkward. It was surgical rejection. One of my oldest clients, whose account alone funded 2 of Harold's lake houses, sent a gift basket to my house. Inside was a note. He called. I declined. "I don't like amateurs playing dress-up. Let's talk expansion next week." By Friday morning, Daniel lost his first $1 million client. And it wasn't just the loss, it was how it happened. Turns out the new guy on their team, a slick junior from Yale, tried to pitch a bundled service package. The client listened politely, then stood up halfway through the pitch and said, "Tell Rich I'll double my retainer if he promises not to let you people near my books again." That one made it back to me through 3 channels. Harold? He wasn't laughing anymore. He called a meeting with his senior staff, door closed, soundproofed. But the office assistant, bless her bored little soul, recorded the whole thing on her phone from the hallway. The highlight? Harold slamming his hand on the table and barking, "Why are they still loyal to him? He's gone." No one answered, not because they didn't know why, but because they did. Here's what Harold never understood. I wasn't just the face. I was the glue. I remembered birthdays. I sent handwritten notes. I flew red-eye to fix problems others delegated. I stayed at cheap motels just to shake the hands of men who'd built things from nothing, guys like me. Daniel had a spreadsheet. I had a memory. He had scripts. I had stories. And my network wasn't built on blood. It was built on time. The one currency you can't fake, can't inherit, and sure as hell can't buy in bulk. That week, Daniel called again. Sounded less like a lion, more like a wet sock. "I don't get it," he muttered. "It's like they worship you." "No," I said. "They remember me." He sighed. "Dad's not happy. He thinks you poisoned the well." I laughed softly. "No, Daniel, I just dug it." That weekend, I received a single white envelope, no name on the front. Inside, a printed client roster from the firm with red marks on nearly every high-value name, crossed out, lost, transferred, or marked unresponsive. At the bottom, one line scrawled in ink, "So who's the foundation now?" I folded it, tucked it into my desk drawer, and went back to work. Because this wasn't revenge. It was just gravity finally doing its job. Daniel thought he inherited a throne. What he got was a stage set, with props, curtains, and just enough scaffolding to collapse under his weight. And the best part? He never noticed the screws were already loose. It started with a vendor mix-up. Monday morning, the office printer jammed. Again. Daniel stormed out of his new corner office, yelling at the temp assistant like it was her fault the toner hadn't been delivered. She blinked. "We use Bixby and Sons, right?" Daniel looked confused. "No, we use Cargill Supplies, always have." She said, scrolling. "System says Bixby, and the invoice is routed to RMS Advisory Group." He froze. Who the hell is RMS Advisory? That was the first crack. 2 hours later, Daniel was in a conference room with Harold, holding a stack of documents their compliance officer handed him like it was radioactive. Turns out RMS Advisory wasn't a shell. It was a licensed consulting firm, filed quietly, 2 years ago, same building, same floor, same suite number, operating in parallel. Not illegal, clever. Because while Harold's firm paid the leases and the public image, I had slowly shifted the operations. HR, contracted through RMS. Accounting, RMS, vendor management, IT, security access protocols, all routed through RMS systems. The printers, the servers, even the damn email infrastructure had been slowly mirrored, so while they thought they were cutting me out, they were actually cutting through my skin. And every time Daniel opened his laptop, he was booting into my back end. It hadn't been a fight, it had been a migration. When Harold slammed the folder shut, his face was the color of ash and ego. "This is sabotage," he said. "No," the compliance officer corrected. "It's diversification. There's no conflict on paper, but the overlap is extensive." Harold turned to Daniel. "Did you know about this?" Daniel stammered. "No, I thought it was just Rich's LLC. He used it for 1099S or something." "No," I muttered under my breath from my office across the hall, where I was listening in through the very air vents I paid to have reinstalled. I used to joke that the floor plan had good bones. Now, it had mine. Later that day, I made an appearance. Just a casual walk through the shared kitchen, refilled my coffee, nodded to Harold's secretary, who, by the way, had been on my payroll for 11 months. She smiled warmly. "Need me to forward the Friday reports?" I nodded. "Use the RMS address this time." Daniel saw me as I turned the corner. He looked pale, sweating through his overpriced linen shirt, holding a phone like it was about to explode. "You son of a bitch," he said. I tilted my head. "Everything okay? This whole operation, it's yours?" I sipped my coffee. "That depends. Which operation are we talking about? The systems, the staff, the back end?" "Oh," I said with a smile. "That." He stared at me, blinking. "You planned this." "No, Daniel," I said, brushing past him. "I built this. You just moved in." That night, Harold tried damage control, issued memos, called emergency meetings, even offered me a reconciliation dinner at that overpriced steakhouse they always used for closings. I didn't go. Instead, I updated my own team in the RMS Slack workspace. New status, Phase 2, go. Because here's the part they still didn't get. I didn't fight the takeover. I prepared for the collapse. And I was just getting started. Harold always believed the board existed to nod and approve. That's what happens when you handpick your yes men for a decade, fly them out to golf retreats, and toss out dividends like peanuts at a ballgame. But power built on loyalty isn't real, it's rented. And when the rent comes due, well, sometimes the locks change. Thursday, 7:42 a.m., Conference Room 6B. 3 of the firm's board members sat waiting, not Harold's usual cronies. These were the quiet ones, the ones who read every line of every report and said little during meetings, the ones who made their money before Harold knew how to spell EBT day, real operators. Harold arrived 5 minutes late, sipping from a branded mug that read "Founders lead, others follow." Subtle. He didn't sit. "So," he said, "what's this about?" They didn't waste time. "Client retention is down 31% in 2 quarters, said Charles Eng, the one Harold once described as the guy who always brings spreadsheets to dinner. "Revenue projections for Q3 have been revised downward 3 times, added Lisa Montrose, an efficiency hawk who never moved her chair an inch unless it created value. "And staff morale," said Everett Shaw, glancing at his tablet, "is somewhere between detached and resigned. Your employee survey responses were instructive." Harold scoffed. "So what? A couple clients leave, a few interns whine on Glassdoor? Grow up. This is a transition period. It's messy. They'll adjust." Lisa didn't blink, just slid a folder across the table. Inside, a printed resignation template. Clean, no severance dispute, no legal mess, just a quiet, elegant off-ramp. Charles leaned forward. "We recommend you accept this. Step aside before the spiral becomes irreversible." Harold let out a short laugh. "Recommend? You recommend I resign from the company I founded?" "No, Harold," Everett said, calm as a winter pond. "We're informing you that if you don't, we'll proceed with a vote to remove you. We have the numbers." Harold looked around the table like someone waking up to find the locks changed. "You're making a mistake. My name's still on the building." Lisa replied, "So was Kodak's." He exploded then, full tantrum, pounded the table, called them traitors, shouted about loyalty and betrayal and how no one survives without me. But no one raised their voice back. No one tried to calm him down. They just stood, one by one, like they were already late for more important meetings. Everett was the last to leave. At the door, he paused. "You asked why everyone's still loyal to Rich," he said. Harold didn't answer, just stood there, red-faced, fists clenched. Everett nodded once. "Because he gave them something you never did. Security." Click. The door shut behind him with a soft, surgical finality. Harold stood alone in that oversized glass box, a man who once commanded every room now shouting at empty chairs. Outside, the hall was quiet. Staff walked by without stopping. No one greeted him. No one made eye contact. And somewhere down the corridor behind a plain door marked RMS Advisory, Suite 604, a new meeting had already begun. Quiet voices, serious minds, a firm being rebuilt, not by bloodline or bluster, but by someone who understood the only power that lasts is the kind you don't have to announce. The power Harold once had was already being printed on new letterhead. She cornered me in the kitchen like I was the criminal. No, how was your day? No, I heard what happened at the office. Just a cold glass of Chardonnay in her hand, posture tight, voice tighter. You're doing this to hurt them, Jessica said. I didn't turn around, just let the words hang in the air between us like smoke from a slow-burning fire. She was dressed like she always was on Thursdays, cream blouse, gold studs, hair too perfect for someone who worked from home, probably had lunch with one of her silent friends who smiled politely while tearing me apart with their eyes. I stirred the pot on the stove once, twice, then finally spoke. No, I said, they already did the damage. I'm just not standing in it. She crossed her arms, leaned against the fridge like she owned the room, like this house was still neutral ground. They trusted you. They gave you everything, and now you're embarrassing them. I laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that says, you really believe that, don't you? Jessica, I said, turning to face her, they gave me everything? I raised one hand, tick-marked fingers. Let's see. Your father took my role without warning. Your half-brother stole my clients and my parking spot. And you sat through that announcement dinner smiling like the appetizers were worth my execution. She looked away. Silence. But it wasn't guilt. It was calculation, watching me, waiting for the right line that might crack me, like she always did. You're blowing this up, she said. This isn't how grown men handle disappointment. Oh, I'm not disappointed, I said calmly. I'm done. That hit. She blinked. So what? You're going to ruin your own family? Tear it all down? It's already torn down, I replied. I'm just refusing to live in the wreckage. You're being vindictive, she snapped, her voice rising. They treated you like family. And that's when I dropped the last brick. 17 years, and the second I wasn't convenient, I was deleted. Not reassigned, not negotiated with, deleted. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. You stood by when they replaced me, I said, voice flat. You don't get to cry about the consequences. She put the glass down hard enough for it to clink. You know, she said bitterly, you always acted like you were better than us, like you didn't need us. No, I said, walking past her. I just never needed to prove I was. Upstairs, the door to our bedroom slammed an hour later. She didn't come down for dinner. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, her side of the closet was empty. No note, no text, no apology, just a void, and one less person pretending silence meant loyalty. She moved into her mother's condo, the same mother who once told me, men who marry into money should know when to stay grateful. I never forgot that line. Neither did my accountant, who made sure Jessica never had access to my actual money, only the illusion of it. Prenup Clause 7, subsection B, joint assets contingent on active employment in shared enterprise. And since she never worked a day in that firm, she left with her shoes. That's about it. Funny how quickly we built this together turns into what was yours was mine, until a lawyer points at the deed and reminds them who actually signed it. So, no, I wasn't out to hurt anyone. But if they insisted on setting fire to my name, I'd make damn sure they didn't get to enjoy the heat. The invitations went out on thick cream cardstock, Harold's favorite kind, gold leaf lettering, embossed logos, the whole desperate dance. Client appreciation gala, celebrating legacy and the future. Black tie, valet included, signature cocktails named after founding partners. Except one name was missing, mine. Daniel had it printed without hesitation. Harold approved it with a nod. Jessica, wherever she was now, didn't even pretend to raise a concern. They booked out the Bellevue Grand Ballroom, 200-seat capacity, live jazz, a menu curated by that Michelin star chef with the forgettable name, the one who charges 4 digits to drizzle foam on top of disappointment. They planned it like a coronation, Daniel's grand reveal to the remaining whales. The new face of the firm, Harold kept saying. This is where we rebuild. I got my invite too. Delivered by mistake, I assume. Someone in their mailroom hadn't updated the contact list. Ironic. I didn't RSVP. I had other plans. Same night, same time, 3 blocks down, less marble, more purpose. I hosted a Founders Circle dinner. 40 people, private room, no press, no banners, just long tables, good food, and the quiet hum of trust. It wasn't called a gala. It didn't need to be. My clients, the real ones, came to me, not out of pity, not out of rebellion, but because they wanted to, because somewhere along the way, I'd become something Harold never could, indispensable without being loud. Over beef tenderloin and Bordeaux, we talked expansion strategies, roll-up acquisitions, joint ventures. Not one person asked about Daniel. I knew because one of my guests showed me their phone, group text from the other event. A photo of the ballroom, dozens of empty chairs. Someone had captioned it, "Where the hell is everyone?" Someone else replied, "They're with Rich." At 8:13 p.m., Harold took the mic. His voice shook, not from age, from absence, from the echo of a room designed for applause but filled with whispers. "Where's Richard?" That line spread faster than the wine. A former client of mine, seated next to Daniel, actually stood up halfway through the welcome speech and said, "Excuse me, I need to be somewhere real." He showed up to my event 20 minutes later, grinning like he'd escaped a cult. "They had a saxophone player doing Coldplay covers," he said, pouring himself a drink. "Kill me." Back at the Bellevue, someone from their junior team tried to spin it. "We're aiming for quality over quantity this year, more focused, intimate touch points." But the board noticed. So did the staff. Waiters cleared half-full water glasses from empty seats, trying not to make eye contact with each other. One of the catering crew later DM'd me. They tipped like they were embarrassed to be there. By 9 p.m., Daniel was off to the side, fiddling with his phone. Harold was silent, swirling a glass of scotch like it might whisper answers if he stared long enough. Meanwhile, our room across town was buzzing. Deals were made, partnerships inked. A few people laughed so hard someone spilled a drink. On themselves, thankfully. Not one person asked about Harold, or Daniel, or the future of the old firm, because they already knew. The future was here. It just didn't have their name on it anymore. It was raining that morning. Soft, steady, almost theatrical. The kind of rain that makes suits cling, umbrellas flip, and tempers rise before the first coffee. Daniel showed up late to the office, flustered and damp, his custom Italian loafers already ruined by the puddles outside. He barely noticed the crowd gathered at the front doors. Employees, vendors, even the mail guy, all craning their necks to read the oversized notice taped dead center on the glass. White background, black font, clean, final. New ownership pending, details confidential. Below that, in smaller print, all inquiries to be directed to Whitestone Holdings, LLC. Daniel blinked. What the hell is Whitestone? He pushed through the crowd like a man trying to reclaim territory, stormed inside, and found Harold in the main conference room already holding the printout in one trembling hand. "They're saying we've been acquired," Harold muttered, voice gravel thick with disbelief. "I didn't sign anything. Did you?" Daniel shook his head, then hesitated. That hesitation was everything, because somewhere in the back of his mind he was connecting dots. Vague whispers about client exits, the board's shift, that dinner, the silent exits, the sudden reassignments, the new vendors, the fact that his inbox had been light for weeks, despite leading the future. And then he got the call. Unknown number, straight to voicemail. I kept it short. "Congratulations," I said. "You've got new partners." Harold called next. No voicemail, just raw anger. "You planned this," he growled. I waited a beat, then replied, "No, I warned you. I offered you a clean exit. You refused." Silence. Then quieter. This is war." "No, Harold," I said, "this is math." I hung up. The acquisition wasn't hostile, not technically. It was strategic, calculated, months in the making, spearheaded by Whitestone Holdings, a modest private equity group led by a woman Harold used to forget the name of. Laura, my former assistant, the one who ordered his lunch, printed his reports, took his condescension with a practiced smile and remembered everything. After I left, she came with me, quietly, legally, willingly. I made her partner in RMS. And while Daniel played CEO with the bones of a dying firm, Laura and I were making moves, recruiting, consolidating, building, backed by 5 silent partners, all former clients of the firm, all burned, all rich, all patient. We waited for the dip, waited for the staff exodus, for the board fatigue, for the value to drop just enough to trigger panic. And when it did, we made the offer. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't emotional, it was precise. One board vote later, and the transaction was greenlit, pending final sign-off. The firm wasn't technically Harold's anymore, it was pending. The irony? The final signatory needed to approve the transfer of operational control was Laura. She signed it that morning. And that notice on the door? She personally printed it and taped it up, flanked by the 2 remaining senior partners, both of whom had already accepted advisory roles under Whitestone. Daniel, for the first time in his short, glittery career, looked scared. Not frustrated, not angry, scared, because this wasn't a battle anymore. It was cleanup, and he had nothing left to defend. The final boardroom didn't look like a battlefield. No overturned chairs, no torn contracts, no shouting matches, just the hush of air conditioning, the faint scratch of pens on paper, and the occasional clink of a glass set down too hard. Harold sat at the head of the table, but he didn't look like a head of anything anymore. Shoulders slumped, tie askew, face pale with that waxy shine of someone whose world had finally caught up to his lies. A legal rep from the firm sat beside him, gently guiding his hand across the resignation letter. Effective immediately, due to health-related concerns, the form read. Everyone in the room knew what that really meant. The only thing sick was his grip on power. Daniel sat 3 seats down, wearing a suit too sharp for a man that deflated. He wasn't yelling this time, just glaring across the table like if he stared hard enough he could burn a hole through my chest. Across from them, Laura sat tall, composed, in a blazer she'd once joked was too expensive for someone who used to fetch Harold's coffee. Now she was CEO, full vote, signed, sealed, and fully backed. I walked in last. No announcement, no preamble, just the sound of my steps on the polished floor. I took the seat beside Laura, calm, quiet, purposeful. Daniel didn't even try to hide the sneer. "This isn't what Dad built," he muttered, voice tight. I looked at him for the first time that day. Really looked. He was tired, older, or maybe just suddenly aware of the difference between title and legacy. "No," I said, "it's what I rebuilt after he broke it." Laura slid the last document across the table, a final signature for the transition of equity, the old guard's last breath. Harold didn't speak, he just signed. One pen stroke after another until the weight of his name didn't matter anymore, and just like that, it was done. The firm was no longer theirs. It wasn't mine either, not exactly, but it wasn't built on bloodlines, entitlement, or vanity anymore. It was built on systems, accountability, memory, and people who kept their promises even after being erased. As we stood to leave, Daniel turned one last time. His voice cracked, not with volume but with something worse, the realization that the ending was real. "You destroyed the family," he said. I paused at the door. "No," I replied. "The family tried to destroy me. I just removed the illusion." He blinked, like he'd never even considered that possibility. Then we walked out. Me, Laura, and the future they never saw coming. No fireworks, no headlines, just a legacy reclaimed, brick by brick. And the boardroom, finally, was silent.